This video is sponsored by Surfshark. Despite the narrative that Disney put out prior to the release of Marvel's Black Widow, the finished movie wasn't nearly as infused with political messaging as the headlines would have you believe. By contrast, the Disney Plus series WandaVision, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and Loki genuinely were every bit as ideopolitically charged as Kathleen Kennedy's Star Wars. Marvel's Black Widow may have been released after those Disney Plus series, but only because of the lockdowns. Black Widow was made before them. In being more recent, it is the Disney Plus series which are representative of the direction the MCU might be going forward. Could that mean that Marvel will be heading down the same path as Kathleen Kennedy took Star Wars? And if so, why would Kevin Feige do that? We put the questions to writer and producer Kamran Pasha.
Well, I personally believe Black Widow is the last of the good MCU movies from that old era when it was just about storytelling, right? And then the new MCU era began after Black Widow was really finished. I mean, yes, we had Captain Marvel, which was the outlier and in fact even in the Endgame movies, they had the new people were like, who's this Captain Marvel? They didn't really, the characters didn't like her, which meant the directors understood the critique that people were giving of that movie, where it fell into the evolution of Marvel. And Black Widow is part of that earlier vision, in my opinion. And that's why I didn't feel it was a preachy movie. I didn't feel anyone was giving me all women are good, all men are bad. And I didn't feel that there was a message to desexualize Black Widow or any of the lovely women in this movie. In fact, their beauty and their sexuality is very much natural to the film. And so it is the last remnant of the MCU that I think most of us loved, in my opinion. And so, I think we're now in a new direction where it's not just the marketing and the PR and the news articles saying these things about where Marvel is going. I think Marvel is going down that path. And I've said, perhaps I've even said it on Midnight's Edge, that I believe that, that Mr. Feige, who is now a member of the club, a bona fide member of the club that I mentioned in Hollywood, is being fed bad advice because the club doesn't like newcomers, and he's a newcomer. Right. And so for a decade, as Scarlett Johansson pointed out, for a decade, these were popular movies with no political agenda, with no feminist agenda, no sexual agenda. They were just fun movies. Right. And they had flawed characters. Tony Stark is a playboy, and that's who he is. And he's an insensitive guy. And they went with it. Right. And so that represented what the audience wanted. And Mr. Feige gave the audience what it wanted, to his tremendous success, allowing him to enter the club. And the club doesn't really like this newcomer. And so what happens when you join the club? They start giving you bad stock advice so that you lose your money and leave the club. And so he's being given bad stock advice right now, which is you got to make this political, man. That's where the market is. And once you get in the club, the excitement of finally being accepted as a member of the hierarchy of Hollywood makes you very amenable to their advice, which isn't coming from a well-intentioned place. And Mr. Feige is now leading in a direction that I think will not help his brand.
It would appear then that Kevin Feige may be taking Marvel down the same general path that Kathleen Kennedy took Star Wars. And just to refresh everyone's memories, that worked so well that audiences fled, box office and merchandise sales tanked, and Jon Favreau had to come in and right the ship. And it still remains to be seen how that will work out. How long do you think it will be before Marvel needs a similar rescue mission?
Well, I think, as I mentioned, I think Mr. Feige is now embracing this new path and being advised to do so by people who don't have his best interests at heart. And so I think we're going to go down this path for a few more years, perhaps 4 to 5 years. I think this next phase will not be as successful as it could be, and not be as successful as the previous films were. It is not as overt as what happened with Star Wars, which just had this incredibly poor storytelling and ridiculous Mary Sue characters that in many ways disrespected the actors and actresses who had to play these characters. I don't think we're there yet with Marvel. I think we're still at a place where we're still having, interesting characters do interesting things, but we're having overlaid on top of it certain agendas and conversations that are unnecessary. When I'm saying that, for example, we say female driven. Black Widow was a powerful female character, right? And she was always an interesting female character. Loki, by his own myth, is a shapeshifter that takes on female forms. So there was no reason to make any commentary about those characters. They're already there in the story. There's no reason to add any commentary. If someone wants to take away from it, I'm so proud that Loki is gender fluid. Oh, that's a personal takeaway. Great, good for you. There's no reason to add any commentary. It's who they are. The difference is that now it's being used for a 2021 political commentary rather than the just the inherent nature of the character. But because it's the inherent nature of the character, it is not the same as what was done with Star Wars, where you twisted and destroyed characters for a political narrative. So I think it's going to take a longer time for there to be significant pushback that Mr. Feige is going to have to notice and react to it. Whether people at Lucasfilm liked it or not, they had to notice and react to the fact that the audience was revolting quite rapidly. And even if they resented the audience, they had to react to it. Whereas I don't think Mr. Feige yet knows that the audience, at least a good portion of it, doesn't like this kind of stuff being added on top of otherwise good stories. Because I just don't think it's gotten to a place where the stories are themselves bad. They're just adding this hectoring layer to it, which is unnecessary. And it's going to damage them, perhaps not as much as it damaged Star Wars because it's not as extreme yet. If it becomes like that, once we start seeing Mary Sue characters and we're seeing, there's one thing about saying, okay, well, now a black man has the Captain America shield, and another thing about going back and making, Captain America, a loser and a jerk. And, you're already beginning to see some of that in these comics where Captain America is no longer proud to be American, right? Once they start going down that direction and rewriting these characters, I think the reaction will become more volatile. And we're already seeing that within the comics. So it's going to be a process ahead. We're looking at least 5 or 6 years of this. And if it gets extreme, he'll have to react to it. It's just unfortunate because none of this is necessary. None of this is necessary for this franchise. You don't need to add any of this on there. It's inherent there.
This was an excerpt from a longer interview with Kamran Pasha about Black Widow and Marvel, the full version of which you will find linked to in the description. We recommend you watch the full interview for some very cogent analysis on the Black Widow movie so you can decide for yourself if you want to see it. There are some out there that have expressed an interest in taking to the high seas. But please note that this is something that neither Midnight's Edge, our sponsors, nor any other affiliates condones. Not only is piracy wrong, you are exposing yourself to endless spyware, tracking software, and other malware out there on the high seas. And that's on top of all the data that is stolen from you during your regular browsing. Well, modern problems require modern solutions, and many of them can be found in a VPN, such as the one delivered by this channel's sponsor, Surfshark. A VPN, or Virtual Private Network, is a privacy protection tool which guarantees instant online safety and encrypts all data sent via the internet. On top of that, Surfshark allows you to bypass geo-blocking restrictions by changing the country you access the internet from, which also gives you access to 15 different Netflix libraries by simply changing your virtual location. Not only that, outside of the US, Star, the international version of Hulu, comes bundled with Disney+. If you're in the US and change your location to, say, the UK, well then you just might get Star as well. One of the advantages with Surfshark over many other VPN providers is that it allows one account to be used on unlimited devices. That's part of the reason why Surfshark is the VPN of our choice, and it gets even better. If you type in the code MIDNIGHT when ordering, that triggers an exclusive offer in which you now get 83% off the normal list price, plus 3 extra months for free. Surfshark also offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk in trying it out. Do check out the link in the description below for further details and to order. With that said, be sure to check out the full interview with Kamran Pasha. But for now, Let us know your thoughts on all of this and be sure to subscribe for future updates.